All right, there are three things people seem to be having trouble with: arrays, for loops, and functions. I know it's hard to see. I'm down to this pen, so I have to get new pens. Sorry about that. I thought we could review a little of that, and I'm going to try to make it real simple, so people understand how we do these things, and it becomes almost second nature or rote. Now, I want you to understand how they work in case you need to modify them, but there's some patterns here that you can put on your cheat sheet that if you're like, how do I get through an array? Oh, that's how I go through an array. Let's actually start with that. So an array, remember how we got to an array, right? We got to an array, we had the idea of a variable, and a variable was like int x equals 15 or whatever, right? And in memory, it's just a single box. The fact it's an int tells us the size of the box, 4 bytes or something like that. And inside of it, we label it x, so we slap a label on it x, and inside of it's the number 15. Okay. We got to a point where we wanted, more than 4 balls bouncing around, right? So we made classes, and we made a ball class, which is a brand new type. It's like int, right? But it's but we haven't talked about why object types are different yet. But you can kind of just be like, oh, well, a ball is like a brand new type I made up, and I can make variables of that type. Okay. Now, an array, remember, is the idea that, okay, well, what if we wanted to make 100 balls? Would we make 100 different variables? An array allows us to store a lot of variables, right? So a lot of variables in one, and let's start doing this. I think people like this in class. So that's like an array type. It's not an integer, it's an integer array, okay? X equals new int, and then in here is the size, right? Okay. And so if we say new int 15 or something like that, that's the size of this thing. It's 15 big. If we say 5, right, and we know this, we've done this before, it means there's 5 boxes in memory, 2, 3, 4, 5, and index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So the size is 5, the length is 5. We use the word length, right? Is 5, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And so now we can go through and populate this thing with integers, okay? Pretty easily. We can say 4, and it's always the same, people. Whatever your index control variable is, that's also going to be the index of our array. So some index val, right? Int index val. Int iv equals 0. Iv is less than the length of the array. So x dot length iv plus, or iv equals iv plus 1. Iv equals iv plus 1. Okay, that's it. That's always how you go through it. So the first time through the loop, it's going to be 0. And we could say, let's say we want to set all these things equal to 5. I don't know why you'd want to do that. Or maybe we want to set them, we want the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the number of the index to be actually the value inside each box. We could say x iv equals I. Okay, iv, I'm sorry. Equals iv. Okay? First time through the loop, iv is going to equal 0. Remember, x is still like a length. Length's going to evaluate to 5 here. Okay? And so, first time through the loop, iv is going to be 0. So x of 0 is going to be 0. So that's going to work. And then we come up here, we iterate iv. So iv is now equal to 1. IV's less than length because length is 5, and we play the game again, right? So we have 1 and 1, and so at box number 1, index value number 1, I'm putting the value 1 inside of it. And then we get the 2, and at box number 2, I'm putting the value 2 inside of it. Okay? Arrays and for loops. Arrays and for loops. The only way you traverse through an array from now on is for loops. And how do you do it? If you're like, oh, I can't remember how to do it, it's always this. All right? Unless like there's something in bubble sort, as you might remember, we don't go all the way to the end, right? Because there we're looking at IV plus 1. So if you ever do this, x of IV plus 1, you want to remember like, oh, well, if I'm going IV plus 1, I never want IV to equal 4 in this case, right? Because then plus 1 would be 5. There's no 5 box, right? Because we start at 0, and so there's no 5th box over here. So I have to be real careful if I'm indexing IV plus something, right? Or if I'm indexing, so if I'm indexing IV plus 1, right? I don't want to go all the way to length. I want to go to the length minus 1. Length less than length minus 1. I want to go to 3 because when I'm at 3, we're going to be looking at the box 3 and 4. Okay? Similarly, if you see IV minus 1, that should be a red flag to be like, well, I don't want to start at 0, because if I start at 0, this will be a negative number in here. There's no negative box, so I better start this thing at 1. Okay? That's really like it. That's arrays. Okay? So don't get thrown off by arrays. Right? We're using new to create the arrays. We're running through them with a for loop. That's it. Okay? We're putting values in these boxes. Okay? Let's take a second to review that. There'll be a quick exercise, and then, or not a quick exercise. It'll be a fun exercise though. And then I'll see you next video.